The night she stopped apologizing. You humiliated yourself the moment you pretended anyone would marry you. That's what Ryan Hale said, loud enough for the whole gallery to hear, champagne flute dangling from his fingers like Lena Carter was the joke of the night. His fiancée laughed. Strangers turned. And Lena just stood there, burning. She didn't know yet that her phone was buzzing in her clutch. She didn't know the man whose name she'd signed on a contract 3 months ago was already moving. And she definitely didn't know that by midnight, Ryan Hale would learn what it meant to humiliate a woman whose husband owns half the city. If you're watching from anywhere in the world right now, do me a favor. Drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button. Stick around to the end, because what Lena does next, nobody saw coming. The Halavin Gallery sat on the corner of Madison and 74th like it had been carved out of the block by people who'd never worried about money in their lives. 3 floors of glass and limestone, a doorman who knew which faces to nod at and which ones to make wait, and inside, a crowd that had spent more on their shoes than Lena Carter had spent on rent that month. She shouldn't have come. She'd known it the moment the invitation arrived at the studio, printed on cream cardstock thick enough to cut bread with. A private viewing of the new Marceline exhibit, hosted by the gallery's board. Her boss, Diane, had pressed it into her hand like it was a lottery ticket. "You're going," Diane had said. "Marceline personally requested you. Don't ask me why. I'd kill for that kind of luck." Lena hadn't felt lucky. She'd felt the way she always felt when invitations came with names like that on them. Small, in the wrong dress, in the wrong zip code. But she'd gone home and pulled the black dress out of the back of her closet, the one she'd bought 2 years ago for an engagement party that never happened. And she'd told herself this was work. This was her career. She was 29 years old, she'd paid her own way through design school, she'd earned her desk at the studio, and she was going to walk into that gallery tonight, and she was going to be a professional. She kept telling herself that right up until she saw him. Ryan Hale. Standing by the centerpiece, some massive oil canvas of a woman dissolving into water, with one hand in his pocket and the other resting on the lower back of a woman who was not the woman he told Lena he needed to focus on himself for. Lena's whole body went still. For a second, she thought about turning around. The door was right there, 10 steps. She could be in the elevator before he ever saw her. She could be in a cab before her heart finished falling into her stomach. She could be home, in her apartment on 116th Street, pulling the zipper down on the back of this dress and telling Diane tomorrow that she'd felt sick. But her feet didn't move, because Ryan had already turned his head, and he'd already seen her. His whole face changed. That was the worst part. It didn't go soft or guilty or any of the things a decent person's face should have done. It went amused. One corner of his mouth curled up like she'd just walked into a punchline he'd been waiting 2 years to deliver. "Well," he said, loud enough that 3 or 4 people nearby glanced over. "Look who they let in." The woman next to him turned too. She was tall, blonde, with the kind of jawline you only got from either surgery or genetics that had been saving up for 3 generations. She looked at Lena the way a woman looks at a stain on a tablecloth. "Who's this?" she asked. "Nobody," Ryan said, smiling. "Just somebody I used to know." Lena felt her face go hot. Her hand tightened around the stem of the champagne glass one of the servers had pushed into her hand when she walked in. She hadn't even taken a sip yet, and now she was worried she'd cracked the stem. She should have walked away. She knew it even as she was failing to do it. But something about the way he said nobody, something about the way the blonde woman was already dismissing her, looking back at the painting like Lena had never existed, it rooted her to the floor. "Hello, Ryan." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Small win. He strolled toward her. That was the word for it. Strolled, like a man who had nothing to be ashamed of and a whole night to enjoy. The blonde followed a half step behind, her fingers threaded through his. "Lena Carter," he said, drawing her name out. "I wasn't expecting to see you here. This is a little above your usual scene, isn't it?" "Diane invited me." "Diane." He tilted his head. "Diane from, what was it? That little graphic design place over on the west side, the one with the leak in the ceiling? The studio's on Lexington now." "Ah," he smiled. "Moving up." He said it the way a man says how cute to a child showing him a drawing. Lena didn't answer. She'd learned, somewhere in the 2 years since Ryan had walked out of her apartment with a duffel bag and a speech about needing to grow, that the only thing worse than arguing with him was giving him the satisfaction of thinking he'd gotten to her. "This is Marissa," he said, finally remembering the woman attached to his hand. "My fiancée. Marissa, this is Lena. She and I dated for a while, back when I was figuring things out." Figuring things out. 4 years of her life reduced to a phase. Lena's jaw tightened. "Nice to meet you," Marissa said, in a voice that made it clear it was not, particularly. "You too." A beat. An awkward one. Ryan was watching Lena's face like he was waiting for something. A crack. A tremor. She could feel him waiting, and that was what did it. That was the thing that made her chin come up. "Congratulations," she said. "On the engagement." "Thank you." "When's the wedding?" "June." "That's fast." "When you know, he said, and squeezed Marissa's hand, and Marissa giggled, actually giggled, and Lena thought, "I'm going to throw up. I am going to actually throw up in this gallery, and they're going to put me in a tabloid." "Well," she said, "I should go find—" "And you?" Ryan cut in. "Anyone special these days?" She should have said no. That was the clean answer. "No, I'm focusing on my career. No, I'm taking some time for myself." She'd used those lines on her mother, on her sister, on the 2 coworkers who kept trying to set her up with their cousins. But something about the way he was looking at her, something about that little smirk that said he already knew the answer, that he already pitied her for whatever pathetic little life she'd been leading since he upgraded. Something about it snapped. "Actually," she said, "I'm married." The words hit the air and sat there. Ryan blinked. Then he laughed. Not a chuckle. A real laugh. A head back, teeth out laugh. The kind that turned heads. "I'm sorry," he said. "You're what?" "Married." "You're married?" "Yes." "To who?" "You don't know him." "Oh, I bet I don't." His grin was enormous now, sharp at the edges. "Since when?" 3 months?" 3 months? "Yes." "And you didn't— I mean, nobody told me. I haven't heard a word about this from anyone. You know Greg still works with your brother, right? Greg would have mentioned it." She hadn't thought about Greg. She hadn't thought about Greg in 2 years, and she hadn't thought about what it would mean that Ryan still had a back channel straight into her family. "It was small," she said. "Just the 2 of us." "Just the 2 of you." His eyes were dancing. "Eloped?" "Something like that." "What's his name?" She hesitated a half a second too long. "Adrian." "Adrian what?" "Voss." A pause. Ryan's smile stayed on his face, but something flickered behind his eyes. For one breath, one single breath, Lena thought she saw something that looked almost like recognition. Then it was gone, and he was laughing again. But the laugh was different now. Forced. Too loud. "Adrian Voss," he said. "Sure, right. You're married to Adrian Voss, as in, what, the Voss Group Adrian Voss?" "Yes." Marissa laughed. A short, musical little thing. "Oh my God," Marissa said. Honey, that's sad." Marissa, no, I feel bad for her." Marissa turned to Lena, wide-eyed, sympathetic in the way rich women got sympathetic when they wanted to be cruel. "Sweetie, you don't have to lie. Nobody's judging you for being single. I'm not. Adrian Voss is not going to marry some— I'm sorry, what do you do again?" "I'm a designer." "A designer?" Marissa smiled. "That's wonderful. That's a real job." Ryan was laughing so hard now he had to put a hand on Marissa's shoulder to steady himself. A few people had drifted closer. Someone was filming on their phone. She saw the glint of the screen, angled low near someone's hip. Her stomach dropped. "Okay," Ryan said, catching his breath. Okay, I'm sorry. That's a good one. You had me for a second there, I swear. Adrian Voss. You didn't want to maybe start with like a divorced dentist? Something believable?" "Ryan." What? I'm being nice. I'm genuinely impressed at the commitment to the bit." "I'm not—" "Lena." He leaned closer, dropping his voice like he was doing her a favor. "Sweetheart, come on. I knew you when you cried over a $40 dinner check. You have to know how this sounds. You don't— It's okay to be alone, you know. Doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It just means— look, I told you when we broke up, you're a great girl, you're sweet, you're not built for my world. That's not an insult, that's math. Some people are meant for Manhattan, some people aren't. Someone behind him actually snickered. Lena's eyes stung. She didn't let the tears come. She'd die before she let him see her cry in this gallery, in this dress, with this many phones pointed at her. But her hand was shaking so hard that champagne was sloshing up the sides of the flute, and she couldn't make it stop. I have to go, she said. Don't. I have to go. She turned. Too fast. Her heel caught on the edge of the runner rug and she stumbled, only half a step, but it was enough. Ryan laughed again. Marissa laughed. Someone in the group behind them laughed. And Lena Carter walked out of the Halavan gallery with her face on fire and her ears roaring and her shoes clicking too loud on the marble floor, past the doorman, past the valet stand, out into the November cold where her breath fogged in front of her face and the city light smeared in her vision because she was finally starting to cry. Huts. She made it half a block before she had to stop. She ducked into the alcove of a shuttered dry cleaners, 3 storefronts down, and pressed her back against the cold glass of the door. The dress wasn't warm enough. She hadn't grabbed her coat from the coat check. She'd just left, like her body had decided to flee without consulting her about the $70 wool coat she was leaving behind. She was shaking. Her teeth were actually chattering, and she couldn't tell how much of that was the cold and how much was the thing in her chest that felt like a fist opening and closing. You're not built for my world. God, she'd almost forgotten he talked like that. She'd almost forgotten the whole catalog of things he used to say. The little cuts, delivered soft, always with that patient, disappointed face, like he was so sorry she wasn't keeping up. You're a little too emotional about this, Lena. You're overthinking it, Lena. Have you thought about maybe not wearing that in front of my friends? I love you, but sometimes I wonder if you actually know what love looks like. She pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes. The mascara was going to be a disaster. She'd done a full face tonight, the whole thing. Primer, contour, setting spray, the works. Because a part of her, a small petty part of her that she'd refused to acknowledge in the mirror, had been hoping that somebody she used to know would see her looking like this and be sorry. Well, somebody she used to know had seen her, and the only person who was sorry was Lena. She fumbled her phone out of her clutch with fingers that wouldn't cooperate. The screen was lit up. 3 missed calls and a text, all from the same contact. A. Just the letter. That was how she'd saved him. The text was short. Where are you? No question mark. That was Adrian. Punctuation was something he used the way other people used jewelry, only when he felt like it. Lena stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered. She'd only ever called him twice in 3 months. Once when a pipe had burst in her apartment and the landlord had stopped returning her calls. Adrian had sent someone within the hour, and the pipe was fixed before she got home from work. Once when her car had been towed from a street she hadn't realized was a tow zone. Both times he'd answered on the first ring. Both times he'd taken care of it before she'd finished explaining. They weren't in love. That was the agreement. He needed a wife on paper, something to do with his grandmother's trust, something to do with a family board that wanted him to settle. And she'd needed a lot of things. She'd needed the medical bills for her mother's chemo to stop showing up in red ink. She'd needed to not lose the studio apartment when the rent went up. She'd needed just once to say yes to something that felt like a door opening instead of closing. Adrian Voss had offered her all of that, signed and notarized, in exchange for her name next to his on a marriage certificate. They lived apart. They slept apart. They saw each other at 4 or 5 public things a year, always brief, always proper. He kissed her on the cheek in photographs. He held her hand when cameras were watching. That was it. That was supposed to be it. She didn't know how he had known 3 months ago that she was in trouble. She'd never asked. She'd signed the papers and she'd cashed the checks, and she'd told herself it was fine. It was fine. It was just a transaction between 2 adults who needed things from each other. She stared at the word on the screen. Where are you? Her hands were shaking so badly she had to type it twice. Gallery. Outside. I need to go home. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Then the reply. Stay there. She blinked. Tried again. I can take a cab. Stay there. 2 minutes. She looked up the street. The gallery was a bright rectangle of gold light half a block away. The doorman still at his post, a few people filtering in and out. Any second now, Ryan would come out of there, probably to have a cigarette, probably with his arm around Marissa, and he'd see her standing out here alone in the cold, and he'd know she'd been crying. And he'd know. He'd know she'd lied. He'd know she'd run. He'd know everything he already thought he knew about her. Confirmed. Please, I just want to go home. She hit send before she could second guess it. No response this time. Just the read receipt, and then nothing. She waited. The cold was working its way into her bones now. Her fingers were starting to go numb. She crossed her arms over her chest and stood in the alcove and tried not to let her teeth chatter. 2 minutes. She'd known Adrian Voss for 94 days. She had counted at some point during one of the long stretches when she didn't hear from him. She knew the broad strokes of his life. Voss Group, real estate, shipping, hotels, whatever else he owned that he never talked about. She knew he was 36. She knew his father had died when he was 19 and his mother lived in Greece. She knew he drank black coffee and he never laughed out loud, but sometimes his mouth did a thing that she had come to understand was the closest he got. She knew his penthouse on Central Park South had 13 rooms, and she had been in 6 of them. She did not know what he did when she texted him that she needed to go home. She found out when the black car pulled up at the curb. It wasn't the town car he usually used. This was something lower, sleeker, an SUV with tinted windows so dark she couldn't see inside. It stopped at the exact spot in front of the alcove where she was standing, like someone had known exactly where to look. The back door opened, and Adrian Voss got out. He didn't rush. He never rushed. He stepped out of the car the way he stepped out of every room, like whoever was waiting for him could keep waiting, and he closed the door behind him, and he looked at her. He was in a tuxedo, black tie. He'd been at something, obviously. His hair was slightly out of place, just at the one spot on the side where he always ran a hand through it when he was thinking. His tie was slightly loosened. She had never, in 3 months, seen his tie loosened. Lena, he said. Just that. Her name. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. He looked her up and down, not the way men looked, assessing, but the way a doctor looked, checking for damage. His eyes stopped on her bare arms, on the goosebumps, on her smeared mascara, on the way her hand was clenched around her clutch so hard the knuckles were white. You're freezing, he said. I'm fine. He took off the jacket of his tuxedo. Just like that. He peeled it off and he held it out and she stared at it for a full 2 seconds before he sighed through his nose and stepped forward and put it around her shoulders himself. It was warm. It smelled like him. Some cologne she'd never identified, something dark and clean, and under it, just a faint trace of cigarette smoke that meant he'd been somewhere tonight with people he didn't like. Get in the car, he said. I can take a... Lena. She got in the car. The inside smelled like leather and something citrus. The driver, a man she'd seen twice before and whose name she couldn't remember, didn't turn around. Adrian slid in beside her and closed the door and the whole world got quiet. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. What happened? He said finally. Nothing. He turned his head to look at her. Adrian Voss had a way of looking at people that was not comfortable. It wasn't angry. It wasn't intimidating exactly. It was just that he looked fully, without any of the little social softenings most people put in their eye contact. When Adrian looked at you, he was actually looking at you. Most people couldn't hold it. Lena usually couldn't either, but she was exhausted, and she was too cold and too humiliated and too tired to lie. I ran into someone, she said. Who? My ex, Ryan Hale. A pause. Inside. Yes? What did he do? Nothing. He just... She swallowed. Her throat was closing up again. He was there with his fiancée. We talked. It wasn't Lena. He was an ass, she said. Okay? He was an ass. He humiliated me in front of a whole room full of people. I said I was married to you, and he laughed. He said I was lying. He said a lot of things. It doesn't matter. I'm fine. I just want to go home. Adrian didn't move. His face didn't change. But she felt something shift in the air of the car, something that had the same weight as a change in pressure before a storm. He said you were lying, Adrian said. Quiet. He laughed. In front of how many people? I don't, 20, 30? Somebody was filming. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It matters. Adrian, I just want to go home. Where is he now? What? Ryan, where is he now? Is he still inside? I guess. He was when I left. Adrian, I really just want to Daniel. The driver's eyes came up in the rear view. Take us back to the gallery, Adrian said. No, what? No. Adrian, no, I don't want to go back. Yes, you do. I don't. He turned to her fully now, and for the first time since she had met him, the first time in 94 days, she saw something in his face that was not calm. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just this. The muscle in his jaw was working, very slightly, and his eyes had gone to a color she didn't have a name for. Lena, he said, listen to me. Okay? You are going to walk back into that gallery with me. Adrian, you are going to walk in on my arm, and you are going to let every single person in that room see whose name you are carrying, and you are going to let that man understand, in front of everyone who just watched him laugh at you, exactly what he laughed at, and then we are going to leave, together, and you are never going to think about him again. Her mouth was dry. I don't want a scene. There won't be one. You don't know that. I do. She shook her head. Adrian, I just want to go. I don't need you to. I'm not doing it for you. She stared at him. I'm doing it for me, he said, because I will not have a man stand in a room in my city and call my wife a liar and walk out of that room unbothered. That does not happen. Not while my name is on that certificate. Not while you are wearing it. She didn't know what her face was doing. He saw it, whatever it was, and his voice changed. Softer, just a click. You can say no, he said. If you say no, we leave. I'll take you home and I won't mention it again. She looked at him. 94 days. She had known this man for 94 days. She had lived most of those days across the park from him, in an apartment he paid for and never visited. She had signed a contract. She had taken his name in the paperwork and kept her own in her life. They were business partners with a marriage certificate, and she had never once, in 3 months, asked him for anything. Now her mascara was smeared down her face, and she was wearing his jacket, and he was asking her permission to defend her honor in the middle of Madison Avenue. Okay, she heard herself say. His eyes closed for a half second, just a half second. Then they opened, and he nodded once. Daniel? Yes, sir. Pull up to the door. The car eased to the curb in front of the Halavan. Adrian got out first. He walked around to her side and opened her door himself. The driver had started to, and Adrian had given him a look, and the driver had sat back down. He held out his hand. Lena took it. His hand was warm. His grip was steady. She realized somewhere in the 3 steps between the curb and the door that she had never actually held his hand before, only touched it. Only been photographed with her fingers loose in his at galas. This was different. This was his whole hand wrapped around hers like an answer. The doorman's eyes went wide. Mr. Voss, the doorman said. Good evening. Good evening, sir. He held the door. Adrian inclined his head exactly half an inch. They walked in. The room was just as she'd left it, only louder now. More people. Another round of drinks. The low hum of a string trio somewhere near the stairs. The chandelier caught the light and threw it back across the polished floor. The painting of the dissolving woman watched over everything. Ryan was in the same spot. He had one hand on the small of Marissa's back and the other raised in the middle of a story he was telling 2 men in matching tuxedos. He was laughing about something. His head was thrown back. The story died in his mouth. It happened in stages. First his eyes caught on Adrian, just a flicker, a reflex, the way anyone's eyes caught on someone who walked into a room with that much gravity. Then the recognition landed. Then his eyes moved, just slightly, to the hand that Adrian was holding. Then to Lena. Then back to Adrian. And Lena watched, in real time, the color drain out of Ryan Hale's face. The room did the thing rooms do when something shifts in them. Conversations didn't stop all at once. They sort of slowed down, the edges going thin, as people started to notice other people noticing. A woman by the bar set her glass down on the counter without looking. A man in a red pocket square turned halfway around and then just stayed like that, caught between directions. Someone, somewhere near the back, said, "Oh my God," under their breath. Adrian didn't look at any of them. He walked, slowly. He walked with Lena's hand in his and his eyes on exactly one man in the room. And the crowd parted. That was the only word for it. People stepped aside without being asked, and the string trio kept playing some soft cover of something, but everybody had stopped listening. They stopped in front of Ryan. Up close, Ryan looked smaller. Lena hadn't ever noticed that Adrian was taller. Not by a lot. Just enough that Ryan had to angle his chin up a fraction, and she watched him hate it. "Mr. Hale," Adrian said. Ryan's mouth opened, closed, opened. He said, I'm sorry, we haven't. Right, I didn't think, Adrian Voss. Right, yes, of course. I believe you know my wife. Ryan's eyes jerked to Lena. They were glassy now, slightly unfocused, the eyes of a man who was running calculations much faster than his face could keep up with. Marissa had gone very still beside him. "Lena and I," Ryan said. "Yes, we used to. I heard. It was I heard what you said to her." The room, already quiet, got quieter. I think there may have been a misunderstanding. There wasn't. You said my wife was a liar." Ryan's mouth opened, and whatever he was going to say died on the way out. A man in the group he'd been talking to took one step back. "Just one. Just enough." I didn't know," Ryan said. His voice was unsteady now. "I didn't know she was. You thought she was alone." "I didn't. You thought she was alone," Adrian said again. Quiet, almost gentle. "And because you thought she was alone, you thought you could do that to her. In public, in front of people. You thought there would be no one standing behind her when she walked out that door. Mr. Voss, that was your mistake." The silence that followed was the loudest silence Lena had ever heard in her life. Ryan swallowed. You could see his throat work. "I apologize," he said, sincerely. "To Lena, to you. I had had a few drinks, and I spoke out of turn, and it was wrong. It was very wrong. I apologize." Adrian looked at him. He didn't speak for a long moment. He just looked. And Lena watched Ryan Hale, the man who had once told her she'd gained weight after Thanksgiving, the man who had told her the reason he didn't come to her mother's funeral was because he didn't want to make it about him. The man who had spent 4 years finding inventive new ways to make her feel too much and not enough. She watched him stand there in a $1,000 suit and slowly start to sweat. "Say it to her," Adrian said. "What?" "Not to me. To her." Ryan turned to Lena. His face was very pale now. Marissa had actually let go of his arm, just a small gesture, a half-inch of distance. Lena saw it, and she knew Marissa saw it too. "Lena," Ryan said, I'm sorry for what I said." Lena looked at him. She looked at him, and she waited to feel something. Triumph, vindication, a clean, shining moment of "I win." What she felt instead was tired. He looked so small. That was the thing she kept coming back to. This man. This man she had cried over for months. This man she had rearranged her whole life around for 4 years. He was just a man in a suit who was sweating through his shirt because someone bigger than him had walked in the room. He had never been more than that. She just hadn't been able to see it before. "It's fine," she said. "No, it's not," Ryan said, quickly, too quickly. "It's not fine. I shouldn't have." "It's fine, Ryan." He stopped. "Enjoy your engagement," Lena said. She didn't say it mean. She didn't say it sweet. She just said it. And she watched his face do something complicated. The humiliation, the relief, the confusion of a man who'd been braced for impact and had instead been handed nothing. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. Once. A small squeeze. She thought he might have been saying good. He turned, still holding her hand, and walked her toward the front of the room. They didn't rush. They didn't look back. He guided her through the crowd the way you'd guide someone through water. steady, patient, a hand at the small of her back now, not pushing, just there. She could feel 100 eyes on her. She could feel her own heart pounding in her ears. At the door, the doorman was already holding it open. "Mrs. Voss," he said. She had never been called that before, not out loud, not to her face. She walked through the door. Outside, the cold hit her again, but it was different now. The shaking in her hands had stopped. She hadn't noticed when. She was still wearing his jacket, and the hem dragged a little past her hips because he was taller than she was, and she could feel the warmth of his body still in the lining. The car was waiting. Adrian opened her door. She got in. He walked around to the other side. When he slid in beside her, he didn't say anything for a long moment. He just sat, his hands on his knees, his eyes forward. Then he turned to her. "Are you all right?" he said. It wasn't a rhetorical question. It wasn't a social one. He was asking because he wanted the answer. "I don't know," she said. He nodded, like that was an acceptable answer. Like I don't know was, in fact, the answer he'd been expecting. The car pulled away from the curb. The gallery receded in the rear window. Gold light, glass doors, the chandelier burning inside like something she was finally done looking at. "Adrian," she said. "Yes." "Why did you come?" He didn't answer right away. He was looking at her with that same careful look, the doctor's look, the one that checked for damage. "You said you needed to go home," he said. "That's not what I asked." "I know." He turned back to the window. "I'll tell you later," he said. "Not tonight." She looked at him, at the sharp line of his jaw, at the ties still slightly loosened, at his hands, which she now noticed were not quite as steady on his knees as he probably wanted them to be. Something moved in her chest, something she didn't have a name for yet. "Okay," she said. The car turned onto Park Avenue. The city blurred past the window in its long, bright ribbon of light. Somewhere behind them, in a gallery full of people who would be telling this story at every dinner party for the next 6 months, Ryan Hale was standing in the middle of a room where no one would quite meet his eyes. Lena Carter pulled Adrian's jacket tighter around her shoulders, and she leaned her head against the cold glass of the window, and for the first time all night, for the first time in a long time, she let herself close her eyes. She didn't know yet that the man sitting next to her had been watching her for much longer than 3 months. She didn't know that the marriage she'd signed out of desperation had been waiting for her before she ever knew his name. She didn't know that the real story of Adrian Voss was about to come apart in a 13-room penthouse on Central Park South, and that by the end of the night, she would have to decide whether the truth was a gift or a cage. She just knew that for the first time in a long time, she was warm. And the car kept driving. The car moved through the city in a silence that wasn't quite silence. There was the low hum of the engine, the soft click of the turn signal at each intersection, the muted city noise through the reinforced glass, sirens somewhere 2 avenues over, a garbage truck at the corner of 68th, the long exhale of a bus pulling away from its stop. But between Lena and Adrian, there was nothing. Not the comfortable kind of nothing, the kind that had weight to it, the kind that sat on your chest. She kept her eyes closed for most of it. She wasn't sleeping. She was too wound up to sleep. Her body was in that strange after state where the adrenaline had drained out of her but hadn't been replaced with anything yet, and her hands were trembling again, not from cold this time, but from something deeper. She kept replaying it. Ryan's face going white, Marissa's hand letting go of his arm. The way the doorman had said Mrs. Voss like it was a title. She opened her eyes once, halfway down Park, and glanced at Adrian. He was looking out his own window. She couldn't see his face, only the line of his profile, the edge of his jaw. He hadn't said a word since they'd gotten back in the car. She closed her eyes again. The driver, Daniel, she remembered now, his name was Daniel, slowed at the gate of the building on Central Park South, and the gate did what it always did, opening before he'd even fully stopped. They rolled into the private drive under the awning and stopped. Daniel got out first and walked around to Adrian's side. Adrian waved him off with 2 fingers and opened his own door. Lena moved to open hers. Adrian was already there. "I had it," she said. "I know." He held the door anyway. She got out. The lobby of the building was a kind of hushed she had never quite gotten used to. Everything was marble and dark wood and that particular old money quiet, that felt like walking into a library or a church. The concierge, a small gray-haired woman named Lena, who had been working there since before Lena was born, looked up from the desk and her eyes softened when she saw them. "Mr. Voss, Mrs. Voss, good evening." "Good evening, Elena," Adrian said. "Do you need anything sent up?" "No, thank you. Sleep well." The elevator was already waiting. Adrian pressed the button for the 42nd floor, and the doors slid shut and Lena watched her own reflection in the polished brass paneling. She looked terrible. Her mascara was streaked under both eyes, and a piece of her hair had come loose from the low knot she'd pinned it into before the gallery, and she was wearing a tuxedo jacket that was 3 sizes too big for her and hung down almost to her thighs. She looked like a woman who had cried in the street. The elevator stopped. The doors opened into the foyer of the penthouse. She'd been here 4 times before. Each time had been brief and official, and she had never gotten past the living room. The first time to sign the contract. The second, for photographs. The third, a dinner with 2 of his business associates who needed to see that she existed. The fourth, a quick stop on the way to a hospital benefit where they'd needed to leave from the same address. Tonight was the 5th. She didn't know, when she walked in, that it was going to be the longest night she'd ever spent inside these walls. He took her coat, his jacket, really, and hung it in the closet by the door. He loosened his tie the rest of the way and pulled it off and set it on the marble-topped console. He turned on a single lamp, just the one, in the corner of the living room, so the whole space glowed in amber and nothing else. "Sit down," he said. "I'm okay. Sit down, Lena, please." It was the please that did it. She walked to the long, low couch by the window and she sat. The view was what it always was. The park spread out black and endless, the lights of the west side a glittering wall on the other side of it, the city going on forever in every direction. He went to the kitchen. She heard him pour water. He came back with 2 glasses and set one in front of her. "Drink this." "I don't need—" "Lena." She drank it. He sat down in the armchair across from her. Not on the couch. Not beside her. He sat where he always sat when they were in a room together, at a measured distance, with a low table between them. He watched her drink the water, and he waited. "Thank you," she said, when the glass was empty. "You don't have to thank me. For tonight, I mean, for— I know what you mean." He paused. "You don't have to thank me for that either." She set the glass down. Her hands had mostly stopped shaking. There was a small quiver still in her left thumb, if she held it out straight, and she hid it by folding her hands in her lap. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "How did you know?" "Know what?" "That I needed you. You texted me before I texted you. You were there in, 12 minutes? It takes 12 minutes to get from wherever you were to 74th and Madison if there's no traffic and you break every light on the way. You didn't even ask what happened before you were already moving. How did you know?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he leaned back in the chair. He rubbed the heel of his hand against his eyebrow. It was the first unguarded gesture she'd ever seen him make. "I was at a dinner," he said, "over on 57th. I left when—" "When what?" He exhaled, slow. "When I saw the video," he said. Something cold moved down her spine. "What video?" "Somebody at the gallery posted it to a group chat I'm on. A business group. One of the men in that room was my board's outside counsel, and he thought I'd find it funny. His words. He said, your wife's ex-boyfriend is making a fool of her. You should probably do something about this." He meant it as a joke. He sent a clip. She stared at him. "A clip of what?" "You and Hale. The part where he laughed." Oh my God. He'd been filming it. The man in the pocket square. He was standing off to the right of where you and Hale were. You didn't see him because he had his phone low. The angle was bad, but the audio was clear. I watched it twice before I got out of my chair. Oh my God. Lena. He was filming it? People were filming? Oh my God, it's going to be on every— It won't. You don't know that. I do. She looked up at him. What does that mean? It means the video isn't anywhere anymore. What? It was in a group chat with 8 people in it. By the time Daniel turned on to 74th, it was down. By the time we walked back into the gallery, the man who filmed it had deleted it off his phone. By now it's off the cloud backup too. She was staring at him. How? I made a phone call. One phone call. Two, actually. The second one was to make sure the first one worked. Adrian. Yes, you had a video. A video that humiliated me, taken down inside of 8 minutes. I don't like to ask twice. She didn't know what to do with her face. She didn't know what to do with her hands. She pressed them harder into her lap, and she looked down at the grain of the wood on the table between them, and she tried to find the shape of whatever she was feeling. I'm not sure, she said slowly, whether I'm grateful or scared. Both is a reasonable answer. Adrian. Yes. Who are you? She hadn't meant to say it. It came out too raw, too quiet, and she heard it land in the room between them. He looked at her for a long time. Do you want the short answer or the long one? He said. The long one. I think I need the long one. He nodded once. He stood up. He walked to the bar cart against the wall, and he poured himself something from a decanter, so not much, 2 fingers. And he turned and looked at her and held up the decanter like a question. She shook her head. He put the stopper back in. He came back to the chair and sat down. He didn't drink it. He just held the glass. I lied to you, he said. What? When I asked you to sign the contract, in the room in my lawyer's office, I told you I needed a wife because my grandmother's trust required me to be married before I turned 37. I told you it was a tax structure. I told you I had looked at a dozen candidates and you were the most compatible with the parameters. Yes, I remember. All of that was true. Okay. But it wasn't the reason. The room was very quiet. What was the reason? She said. He set the glass down on the side table without drinking. He looked at her directly. I had already chosen you, he said. Before the trust came up. Before the lawyer drew up a single document. A year and a half before, actually. I chose you, and then I built the reasons around it. I don't understand. I know, I'm going to tell you. I'd like you to let me get to the end before you decide what you think. She nodded. She couldn't feel her lips. Do you remember, he said, a project at your studio? About 2 years ago. A rebrand for a small restaurant group. 4 locations in the Village and Soho, called, what was it? Wren and Oak. Wren and Oak. Yes, I did that project. I did the whole thing. Diane let me run it. I know. I was one of the principal investors. She stared at him. You were on the investor list for that group? Quietly. I was the silent partner. 4 locations. I owned 60% of all of them until I sold out last spring. I didn't... Your name wasn't on any of the paperwork I saw. No. It wouldn't be. I'm on paperwork as a shell company. That's how most of my investments are structured. But I was at the owners' meeting where Diane presented your mood boards. In April, 2 years ago. You weren't there. She wouldn't bring me to owner meetings. I was too junior. I know. Diane presented your work, and she presented it well. She told the owners your name 3 times. She was trying to get you a raise. The boards were very good. The typography was very good. The way you'd treated the menu copy was extraordinary. You'd written it yourself, even though writing the copy wasn't your job. I remember Diane saying that part. She said we didn't ask her to write it. She just did it, because she said the old copy didn't feel like a place anyone wanted to eat. He paused. I asked her for your name, your full name. I wrote it down on the back of a napkin. I still have the napkin somewhere in a drawer. I'm not telling you that to be... I'm telling you because it's true. That was the first day I knew your name. Lena couldn't speak. Her throat had gone completely dry. 6 weeks later, he said, I ate at the flagship Wren and Oak. Alone. On a Tuesday. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I sat at the bar. I read the menu you wrote. I ate the food. And He stopped. He picked up the glass again. He still didn't drink. I've never been good at this, he said. This part of talking, please understand that. I'm going to try to be clear. Okay. I wanted to know more about you. So I asked. I asked about Diane's studio. I asked about the projects you'd done. I had one of my people look up your portfolio. Nothing. Nothing invasive, nothing like records. Just your public work, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, which is private, but your Pinterest boards, which are not. I looked at what you saved. I looked at what you liked. Adrian, I know how this sounds. I know. I'm asking you to let me finish. She pressed her hand against her mouth. She nodded. I found out, he said, that you were dating someone named Ryan Hale. I found out pretty quickly because he had you tagged in photographs on his Instagram, which was public, because he wanted it public. He wanted his friends to see you. You were, in those pictures, he exhaled. You were laughing, he said. In almost all of them. You laugh with your whole face. Have you been told that? Adrian, it's true. I saw those photographs and I thought, that's a woman who loves that man, and I closed the laptop. I closed it and I told myself I was being ridiculous, and I put the napkin with your name on it in the drawer and I moved on. I had a company to run. I had a life. But you didn't. I did for a while. How long? 8 months? Maybe 9. I didn't look you up again. I want to be clear, I wasn't watching you. I didn't know where you lived. I didn't know where you worked beyond Diane's studio. I didn't know anything I hadn't known the day I first wrote your name down. I couldn't stop thinking about the menu. The menu. The menu. The way you'd written it. There was a line at the top of the dessert page that said, the last course is the one you'll remember. So we treat it like an apology for whatever came before. Do you remember writing that? Yes. I think about that line, he said, more than I should. He finally drank from the glass. Just a sip. He set it back down. 9 months later, he said, I was at a charity event at the Pierre. I wasn't going to go. I went because my mother asked me to represent the family. I walked into the ballroom and I saw you. I was at the Pierre in October 2 years ago. She thought back. She'd gone with Ryan. Ryan had been working some angle, some client he was trying to impress. He'd wanted her to wear the blue dress. He'd told her to smile more. He'd gotten drunk at the bar and left her alone at the table for 40 minutes. And when he'd come back, he'd complained that she'd been sulking. I remember, she said. You were at table 19, I was at table 3. Jesus, Adrian. I saw him leave you at the table. I watched it happen. I watched him come back. I watched him speak to you. I couldn't hear him, but I could see your face. I saw what happened to your face when he spoke to you, and he stopped. The line of his jaw was tight again. I saw him grab your wrist, he said, when you tried to get up. Her whole body flashed cold. You tried to get up from the table. He took your wrist. You sat back down. Adrian, he wasn't, Lena. I'm not telling you what it was. I'm telling you what I saw. I saw a man grab a woman's wrist hard enough to make her sit down. And I sat across the room and I did not get up because it was not my place to get up, because you were there with him and you were not asking for anyone to get up. But I wrote his name down on a napkin too. Ryan Hale. I still have that napkin also. She was crying. She didn't know when it had started. Her face was wet and her hands were wet where she'd put them against her face. A year later, he said, softer, I heard through a colleague's wife, she also uses Diane's studio, that you were no longer with Hale, that he had ended it, that he had said some things, that you were, in her words, I'm sorry, in a bad way. I heard your mother had cancer. I heard your medical bills were sitting on your kitchen table, and he closed his eyes. I'm not a good man, Lena. Adrian, I'm not. I want you to understand that before I say the next part. I am not a good man. I am a man who gets what he wants, and I have been that man my whole adult life. And when I heard that you were unhappy and alone and drowning, I did not think that's a shame. I thought, that's my window. She couldn't speak. The grandmother's trust was real, he said. That part was real. I did need to be married, but I had 3 years. I didn't need to do it fast. I made it fast. I had my lawyer find a reason the deadline was suddenly urgent. I told him to draw up a contract that would look, to a reasonable woman in a difficult spot, like the best offer she'd seen in a very long time. I told him the name of the woman. I told him the parameters. I had the apartment on 116th prepared 6 weeks before you signed the lease. I had Diane offered a new client she couldn't refuse, so she would have the leverage to give you a raise, which meant you'd stay at the studio, which meant you wouldn't take the job offer in Philadelphia that you were about to take. That part I did through a third party. You never knew. Oh my God. I know. Diane, you paid Diane to keep me in New York. I gave Diane a client that was already going to hire her. I moved the contract up. I didn't manufacture the work. Your work was real. Diane was going to pay you anyway. I just made it happen 3 months sooner because 3 months later, you were going to take the Philadelphia job. And if you had taken the Philadelphia job, I wouldn't have been able to sit across from you in a lawyer's office 4 months after that and say the words, "I need a wife." So I engineered the possibility. You made the choice. That is an important distinction, and I need you to hear it. Adrian, you stalked me. I didn't follow you. You paid people to... I paid no one to do anything to you. I gave a woman a business contract that she had every right to refuse. I prepared an apartment in case you needed one, which I never offered until after you said yes to me. I made no phone call about you to anyone who could affect your life without your consent. I did one thing, and one thing only, that I won't apologize for, and you should know what it is. What? I had someone watch Hale for about 6 weeks, after I heard what he'd said to you after the breakup. I wanted to know if he was going to come back. I wanted to know if he was going to escalate. And if he had, I was going to find out, and I was going to end him. Not hurt him, not threaten him, end him, in a financial sense, in every sense that mattered to him. But he didn't. He moved on to the next woman. He let you go. And so I stood down. I put the napkin away. I paid the man off, and I told him to stop. How long did you watch him? 41 days. Adrian, I know. She stood up. She had to. She couldn't sit anymore. She walked to the window and she put her forehead against the glass and she breathed. The park was black below her. The west side glittered. The world was the same as it had been at the gallery. I need a minute, she said. Take as many as you want. Don't talk. Okay? She stood there with her forehead on the glass for a long time. Long enough that the glass warmed up where her skin was. Long enough that her breath fogged a little circle of it and then faded. Long enough that behind her, she heard Adrian set the glass down on the table and not pick it back up. Why are you telling me this now? She said, still to the window. Because you asked me how I knew. That's not why. No, it isn't. Why? A pause. Because tonight, he said, I stood in that gallery and I watched a man laugh at you for saying my name, and I realized I would rather have you hate me for telling you the truth than have you stand in another room for the rest of your life, thinking you were married to a stranger who got lucky. She closed her eyes. I don't want you to sign another piece of paper because you need something from me, he said. I want you to know what you're inside of. I want you to decide, knowing all of it, whether you want to stay. Stay. In whatever this is. We have a contract, Adrian. I'll tear it up tomorrow. She turned. What? If you ask me to, I'll tear it up. Tomorrow morning, I'll have my lawyer dissolve it. The money stays, the apartment stays. Your mother's bills, the fund I set up for that stays. It's in a trust. I can't legally take it back, and I wouldn't if I could. You walk out of here with everything you've already been given, and you never have to see me again if you don't want to. Your name goes back to Carter. The whole thing goes away. You'd do that. Yes. Just like that. Not just like that, but yes. She looked at him, really looked. He was sitting on the edge of the chair now, his elbows on his knees, and his shirt was wrinkled at the cuffs where he'd had the tuxedo jacket on over them, and his hair was falling across his forehead because he'd stopped bothering to push it back, and his eyes were the most tired she'd ever seen anyone's eyes. He wasn't performing anything. That was what got her. There was no calculation in his face. For the first time since she had met him, Adrian Voss looked like a man who was ready to lose. Why did you come tonight? She said again. Different this time, softer. I already answered that. Tell me the real answer. He looked down at his hands. Because when I saw that video, he said, and I heard him call you a liar in front of a room full of people, I had a feeling I have never had in my life. I have been angry. I have been furious. I have wanted things broken. But I have never felt what I felt in that car on the way down to you. I wanted to. He stopped. I don't have the word for it, he said. I don't. I just knew I was going to walk into that gallery and I was going to make him understand in his bones that he had made a mistake. And I wanted him to understand it not because of who I am, but because of who you are. Because you are the woman who wrote the line about the last course. And you are the woman who took care of her mother, and you are the woman who said enjoy your engagement and meant it. And he never understood what he had, and I did, and he doesn't get to laugh at you. Not in my city, not while I'm alive. He looked up at her. That's why I came, he said. She put her hand against the glass to steady herself. Adrian. Yes. This is a lot. I know. This is a lot. A lot. I know. You followed me for 2 years. I didn't follow you. I know how it sounds. I didn't follow you. I knew your name and I knew your work, and I kept track of where you were at a distance, once, for a month, when I thought a man was hurting you. That is the honest version. I want you to have the honest version. I know it sounds worse than I want it to sound. I'm not going to make it sound better. You married me under false pretenses. Yes, you made my life possible so you could what? Court me? Own me? What was the end game, Adrian? I didn't have one. You had to have one. I didn't. I swear to you. I had a contract and a deadline and a hope. I had a hope that if I was in your life, as someone useful, as someone distant, as someone you didn't owe anything to, that one day you would look at me differently. I had no timeline. I had no plan. I was going to wait. I was going to wait as long as it took. If it took forever, I was going to wait forever. And tonight broke something. In me? In me. The room was so quiet she could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen on the other side of the wall. I'm going to need a minute, she said. Take the night. What? Take the night. Take it. The guest room at the end of the hall. It's made up. There are clothes in the closet in your size. You were going to stay here on the 14th for that dinner we had scheduled, and the housekeeper stocks it every month anyway. There's a lock on the door. I'm not going to knock on it. You can leave in the morning or the afternoon or next week. My driver is yours. My building is yours. My name, whatever you want to do with it, yours. Adrian, I'm not trying to trap you here. I'm trying to give you a place to sit down that isn't a cab and isn't a 5-story walk-up on 116th Street. That's all. Take the night. She looked at him. Okay, she said finally. Okay. I'm going to take the night. Yes. I don't know what I'm going to say in the morning. You don't have to know. She walked past him. She was shaking again, a different kind of shaking this time, the kind that came when your body finally understood it had been carrying something for a long time. She stopped at the mouth of the hallway, and she looked back. The napkin, she said. Yes. With my name on it. Yes. Do you really still have it? Yes. Where? He looked at her for a long moment. In my wallet, he said. It's been in my wallet since the night I ate at Wren and Oak. She closed her eyes. She didn't know what she felt. She didn't know if it was love. She didn't know if it was fear. She didn't know if she was furious or shattered or grateful or all three at once in the same breath. She just knew that a man who had known her name for 2 years was sitting alone in an amber-lit living room at midnight in a shirt he had worn to a dinner he'd walked out of, with a wallet in his back pocket that had a napkin in it, with her name on it in his own handwriting. And tomorrow, when she woke up, she was going to have to decide what kind of woman she was going to be. Good night, Adrian, she said. Good night, Lena. She walked down the hallway. She found the room. The door was cracked open and the light was on low. She went in, and she locked the door behind her, and she sat down on the edge of the bed in her wrinkled black dress with her makeup smeared down her face. She didn't cry. She didn't sleep either. She sat there for a long, long time, looking at the skyline through the window, and she thought about all the ways a life could tilt without breaking, and about a napkin in a wallet, and about what it meant to be wanted by someone who had been honest about wanting you only after he had already spent 2 years paying for the privilege of being in the same room as you. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, she lay down on top of the covers, still fully dressed, and she put one hand flat against her own chest, where her heart was still beating too fast. The city went on outside the glass. In the other room, a light was still on. She must have slept, in the end. Not all the way under, just the thin, fevered kind of sleep that comes when your body finally gives up waiting for your mind to catch up. When she opened her eyes, the sky outside the window was the color of dirty milk, and the radiator under the sill was ticking softly, and she had a crease across her cheek from the seam of the comforter. For one merciful second, she didn't remember where she was. Then she did, and the whole night came back in one shove, and she lay flat on her back staring at the ceiling until she could breathe again. Her dress was wrinkled into a shape no iron was ever going to undo. Her mouth tasted like stale champagne. Her hair had decided, at some point in the night, to come half out of its pins and stay there. She sat up slowly and put her feet on the rug, and she sat on the edge of the bed, listening. The penthouse was quiet, not empty quiet. There was a faint sound somewhere, down the hall. The low burble of a coffee maker, maybe, or the hiss of a kettle, and the soft tread of someone moving around a kitchen. But it was the quiet of a house where nobody was about to burst in on you. She sat in that quiet for a long moment. Then she got up, and she went to the closet. He hadn't lied about that either. There were clothes hung on wooden hangers with a kind of calm order that made her chest tight in a way she didn't want to examine. A soft gray cashmere sweater, a pair of wide-leg wool trousers, a plain white t-shirt folded on a shelf, socks in a small drawer. She picked the t-shirt and the trousers because the sweater felt too deliberate, too close to a costume. The bathroom mirror didn't spare her. She scrubbed her face with the back of a washcloth, and most of the mascara came off in gray streaks on the terry cloth, and the rest she got with a second pass. Without the makeup, her face looked younger than she felt. Tired. A little hollow around the eyes. She stared at herself for a long time. Then she twisted her hair up into a loose knot, and she walked out of the room. Adrian was in the kitchen. He was at the island, standing, not sitting. He had an espresso cup in one hand and his phone face down on the marble in front of him. He wasn't looking at the phone. He was just standing there, very still, the way he'd been standing at the bar in the gallery for that half second before he noticed her. His hair was wet. He'd changed. Gray sweater, dark pants, bare feet on the tile. She hadn't known he owned sweaters. She hadn't known his feet had a shape like everyone else's. There was something about seeing him barefoot in his own kitchen that made him look not smaller, exactly. More real. He looked up when she came in. "Hi," she said. "Hi. What time is it?" 7:40. I thought it was later. You slept about 3 hours. How do you know? I don't. I'm guessing. He gestured small at the espresso machine. Do you want... There's coffee. There's tea. The housekeeper brought bagels. She knocked earlier and I told her we weren't ready for anything yet. There's fruit. There's whatever you want. Coffee's fine. Milk? A little. He made it himself. She watched. It was strange. She had been in this kitchen 4 times, and 3 of those times there had been a housekeeper in here doing everything, and the 4th time he had poured her a glass of water from the tap without looking, but he had never made her coffee. She watched him tamp the grounds the way somebody tamps grounds when they do it every morning of their life. She watched him warm the milk in a small steel pitcher. He slid the cup across the marble to her, and he did not meet her eyes. Thank you. Sure. She wrapped both hands around the cup. It was warm. It was the only warm thing in the room. He didn't say anything. He wasn't going to. She could see that already. He was going to wait. He was going to stand there in his kitchen and wait her out, because he had told her last night she could have the night and the morning and as long as she needed, and he was not, it seemed, a man who walked back the things he said. That was almost worse. A man who pushed. She could push back on. She took a sip of the coffee. It was good. She set it down. I'm angry with you, she said. Okay. I want you to know that before we say anything else. Okay. I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but I'm angry. I'm furious, actually. I didn't know I was until just now. Yes. She looked at him. Is that all you're going to say? Yes. Okay. What do you want me to say? I don't know. I want you to defend yourself. I want you to make me feel like I'm being unreasonable, so I have something to push against. I'm not going to do that. Why not? Because you aren't being unreasonable. She let out a breath that was half laugh, half something else. She set the cup down too hard. Coffee sloshed over the rim and pooled on the marble. Adrian, you followed me. You had somebody watch Ryan for a month and a half. You put me in an apartment I didn't know was yours. You moved furniture around in my life I didn't know was being moved. And you want me to just, what? You want me to be mad for an appropriate amount of time and then come sit on the couch with you and have a muffin? I don't want anything from you. That's a lie. It isn't. It is. Everyone wants something. Last night you said you wanted me to stay. You said it in those words. I said I wanted you to decide. Those aren't the same thing. I know. She pressed her palms to her eyes. The coffee was going to stain the marble. She grabbed a kitchen towel off the ring by the sink and she wiped it up. She did it meanly, efficiently, like she was punishing the countertop for existing. Can I ask you some things? She said. Yes. And you'll answer them. Straight. No. No. The honest version is, and I want to be clear, no editorials. Yes or no questions. Yes or no answers. Yes. Did you pay my mother's last medical bills? A pause. Yes. All of them. Yes. Including the ones after she died. The ones from the hospice. The funeral home. Yes. Were any of those bills actually mine? Some of them, the ones from before we met. Those were yours. Everything from March onward, I paid. From March onward, I was already married to you. Yes. So that was part of the contract, technically. Technically. But you would have paid them anyway. Yes. Even if I hadn't signed. Yes. How do I know that? You don't. Adrian. You asked for yes or no. She made a small, frustrated sound. Okay, different question. When you had somebody watch Ryan, was it only watching or did something happen? Only watching. Did you ever speak to him? Before last night? No? Did you ever interfere in his life, jobs, apartments, anything? A pause. Longer this time. Adrian? Once. Once what? Once there was a job. At a firm downtown. He was in the final round. The firm was a client of a bank that I sit on a committee of. I heard he was in the running. I didn't call anyone. I didn't make any requests. But on the day before they were going to make the offer, I mentioned to the right person that I had a personal reason to prefer that hire go another direction. I didn't tell them what the reason was. I didn't threaten anything. I just said it. And he didn't get the job. He didn't get the job. How much money? What? How much money would it have been per year? What did you cost him? I don't know exactly. That level of associate, 180, 200 with bonus. Adrian. Yes, that's a lot of money to take from somebody who grabbed your wife's wrist at a dinner. He wasn't my wife's wrist yet. At the time. Don't be cute. I'm not trying to be. It's a lot of money. He's fine. He's doing fine. You saw him last night. He's engaged to a woman who wears a 2-carat ring, and he drives a car that costs more than the job paid. He's fine. He didn't get that one job from me. You're telling me you took $200,000 a year away from a man because of something he did to a woman you had never spoken to. Yes. Adrian, that's insane. I know. That's not gallant. That's not protective. That is a thing a dangerous person does. I know. Do you actually know that? Yes. She stared at him. You scare me a little, she said. I know. Stop saying you know. Sorry. Say something else. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Anything. Tell me you're sorry. Tell me you're not going to do it again. Tell me something. He set the espresso cup down. He put both hands flat on the marble. He looked at the surface of the counter for a long moment, and then he looked up at her. I am sorry, he said. I'm sorry I made you feel like your life was arranged for you without your knowledge. I'm sorry I watched you when you didn't know you were being watched. I'm sorry I used a charity dinner in October as the first time I ever got close enough to you to hear your voice, and you still don't remember I was there. You were at the Pierre, table 3. I didn't remember. You shouldn't have had any reason to remember me. You were there with somebody else. Tell me the rest. I'm sorry that I am the kind of man who decides things and then makes the world rearrange around my decisions and calls that love. That is not love. I know it isn't. I knew it wasn't last night when I was standing in that gallery in front of Hale, and I know it now. It is a thing love rides on top of, in my case, but it isn't love. I have been aware of that for a while. I just didn't know what to do with it. And the thing you said about not doing it again. I can't promise that. What? I can't promise I won't protect you. If somebody hurts you, Lena, I am going to make them wish they hadn't. That's the one thing I can't walk back. I can promise you I will never do anything behind your back. I can promise you I will tell you before I act. I can promise you that if you say stop, I stop. But if you are asking me to promise I will never do anything on your behalf ever again for the rest of our lives, I can't. I won't lie to you about that. She looked at him. You won't lie to me? No. You lied to me for 3 months. I withheld. That's the same thing. It isn't, but I'm not going to argue with you about it. You started lying to me before you ever met me. I know. She pressed her hand against her forehead. You said stop. What? You said if you say stop, I stop. Okay, stop. What am I stopping? The protecting. All of it. The ending people, the napkins, the whatever it is you do when I am not in the room and I don't know about it. I want it to stop. He looked at her. Done, he said. Just like that. Just like that, yes. You don't even want to negotiate. No. You just, if I say stop, you stop. Yes. She stared at him. Adrian, that can't be the whole thing. You can't be a man who has somebody fired over a dinner in October 2 years ago and then also be a man who stops because I said the word stop in a kitchen. I can be both of those things. I am both of those things. I'm asking you to let me be the second one. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere far down the hall, a clock that she hadn't noticed before ticked once. She walked away from the island. She went to the window. The park was gray and wet below, the paths still dark, the trees bare. Somebody was running, a tiny figure in red moving along the reservoir. She pressed her fingers against the glass and watched the runner disappear around the bend. I need you to do something for me, she said. Her voice came out small. Yes, I need you to tell me what you actually want. No hedging. No, I want you to decide. What do you want if you could choose anything? Right now, what is it? He was quiet for a long time. I want you to stay, he said. As what? As my wife. For the contract. No. For what then? For the thing the contract doesn't say. I want the contract to be a piece of paper we keep in a drawer that we both agree doesn't describe us anymore. I want to eat dinner with you at a table. I want you to come home to this apartment because it is your apartment. I want to know what you think about things. I want to be the person whose name is in your phone under more than a single letter. I want to earn the last course. That's what I want. And I know I have not earned it. I am aware. I am aware that I came into this situation with all the leverage, and I am asking now to give it up. And I am aware that asking is its own kind of leverage, and I am trying very hard right now to just stand here and let you decide. And I am trying not to say anything that sounds like a man bargaining. Adrian, yes. You know what's crazy. What? That was the most honest thing anyone has ever said to me in my entire life. And I don't know whether that's because you're actually honest or because everyone else has been a coward. It can be both. It can be both. She turned from the window. She crossed the kitchen. She stopped on the other side of the island, across from him, close enough that she could see the stubble on his jaw where he hadn't shaved, and the faint darker circles under his eyes, and the place on his left thumb where there was a scar, a small white one, like an old cooking burn. I want to see the napkin, she said. His face didn't move, but something in his shoulders did. A small release. Like he'd been braced for something else. Okay. Now. Okay. He walked around the island, not toward her, past her, into the hallway. She heard him go into another room, the bedroom probably. She had never seen his bedroom. And then he came back with a wallet in his hand. A simple wallet. Brown leather, not ostentatious, worn at one corner. He opened it at the island. She watched his hands, long fingers, a faint tremor in the right thumb that she hadn't seen before. He took out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a napkin anymore. It had been a napkin, once, you could see. The soft creases where it had been folded and unfolded. The faint pink blotch in one corner where something had been spilled on it and dried and never quite come out. But it had been preserved carefully inside a thin piece of plastic, the kind of plastic a trading card came in. He had put his napkin in a sleeve. He held it out. She took it. She unfolded the sleeve. She pulled out the napkin. His handwriting was square and narrow and deliberate, the kind of handwriting you got from a person who had been corrected about their penmanship for most of their childhood. Lena Carter. That was it, just her name. And then, in slightly smaller letters underneath in the same hand, Wren and Oak, dessert menu, April. She stared at it. This is unhinged, she said. You know this is unhinged. Yes, you've carried this in your wallet for 2 years. 2 years and about 7 months. You wrote my name on a napkin, and you kept it. Yes. Why? He didn't answer right away. He was watching her hands on the napkin. Because, he said, I was at a dinner full of people whose names I would forget by the end of the week. And I heard yours once, and I knew I didn't want to. And when I got home, I couldn't find. I was going to put it in my phone, and then I thought that was the wrong place for it. Phones lose things. Phones get replaced. I wanted to put it somewhere that, if I ever wanted to find it again, I would have to reach for it. Adrian. I know how it sounds. It doesn't sound the way you think it sounds. What does it sound like? She looked at him, the napkin in her hand, the worn leather of the wallet on the counter. It sounds like somebody who has been very lonely for a very long time, she said, and didn't know what to do about it. The thing that moved across his face then was not something she had seen before. He looked down at the counter. He cleared his throat. He didn't answer her. After a moment, she folded the napkin carefully. She slid it back into its plastic sleeve. She slid it back across the marble toward him. Here. Yes. Put it back. He did. He closed the wallet. He set it down. Ask me what I want, she said. What do you want? I want to stay in the guest room. A pause. Okay. For a while. Not forever. But for now. I want to stay in the guest room, and I want to eat breakfast with you at this counter. And I want you to not touch me. And I want you to not, I don't know, whatever the protective stalker husband thing is, I want that off. I want it gone. I want to wake up in the morning and know that the man I'm married to is just a guy in a gray sweater who made me a cup of coffee. Okay. And I want to ask you questions. A lot of them. About things you did without telling me. I want the whole list. I want Diane. I want the apartment. I want the charity dinner. I want to know every single person you paid or called or leveraged to put me here, and I want you to tell me without me having to pull it out of you. You're going to make me a list. Okay. And you're going to sit across from me at that dining table, and you're going to watch my face while I read it, and you're not going to explain yourself. You're just going to let me be angry. However angry I'm going to be. For however long I'm going to be. Okay. And I want to say the thing I said last night about the contract. Tear it up. Not yet. He looked at her. What? I want it still there, she said. For a little while. I need to not be so dependent on you wanting me that I'm afraid to be angry at you. I need the contract. I need to be able to walk out of this apartment and go back to the one on 116th Street and know I'm not making that choice because I can't afford not to. I can't. I can't start a real thing from this spot, not without the contract between us. You want me to keep paying you. I want to know that you will. For now. For 3 months maybe. 6? I don't know. Until I can stand up in here without needing you to be the only thing keeping me standing up. Lena. What? I was going to say yes before you finished the sentence. I know you were. That's why I have to ask. He nodded. He didn't argue. Okay, he said. Okay. That's it. That's it, for now. For today. I'm tired, Adrian. I don't want to make any more decisions today. I want to sit down on that couch and I want you to not sit near me. And I want somebody to bring me a bagel. And I want you to start the list. The list? Yes. How long do I have? Tomorrow morning. I want it with the coffee. Written out, every name, everything. Okay. Don't leave anything off it. I won't. Adrian. Yes. If I find out later that you left something off it, I'm going to leave. That day, that hour. I'm going to walk out of this apartment and you're never going to see me again, and you are going to keep my napkin in your wallet for the rest of your life like a museum, and you are going to deserve it. Understood? Okay. Okay. She walked past him. She took her coffee with her. She went to the couch, the same low couch she'd sat on last night, under the lamp that had been turned off now in the daylight. And she sat down in the middle of it, not on either end. She put her feet up on the table. She drank her coffee. After a while, she heard him in the kitchen, quietly, doing the thing a man does when he is trying very hard not to be loud in his own home. She heard a bag rustle. She heard a knife on a cutting board, a drawer, a plate, a second cup of coffee going into the machine. She heard him open a drawer and take out a pad of paper, actual paper, the yellow legal kind, and set it down on the counter. She heard the click of a pen. She didn't turn around. She sat on the couch and looked out at the park and listened to the man she was apparently going to stay married to, for reasons she didn't fully understand yet, write a list of all the ways he had bent her life into the shape of his own, and she sipped her coffee and she breathed. Outside, the runner in red came back around the reservoir. Went the other way now. Disappeared into the gray. She was not happy. She did not feel relieved. She did not feel even that she had made the right decision. She wasn't sure yet what the right decision would have been, but something had shifted at the kitchen island when she had looked at him across the marble and told him to stop, and he had. For the first time since she had walked into that gallery, she felt like the person holding the pen. She sat on his couch, in his apartment, wearing his clothes, married to him on paper, and for the first time in a very long time, she was not bracing. The coffee was still warm in her hand. She took another sip, and she waited for the list. The list came with the coffee, the way she'd asked for it. 4 pages of yellow legal paper folded in half, set down on the marble next to her cup the next morning before she'd even sat on the stool. Adrian didn't say anything when he put it down. He just slid it across, poured himself an espresso, and walked out onto the terrace in his socks to give her the kitchen. She watched him go. He pulled the glass door shut behind him and stood with his back to her, hands in his pockets, looking out at the park. She unfolded the pages. It was worse than she'd expected. Not because of the scale of it, she'd already braced for that, but because of the handwriting. It was meticulous, the kind of handwriting a man uses when he knows the paper will matter. Each entry numbered, each one dated where he had the dates, each one short, no excuses, no explanations. Just the facts. In that narrow square hand, 1st of April. Owner meeting at Wren and Oak. Asked Diane for your full name, wrote it on a napkin. 2nd, April to May. Looked at your public LinkedIn and portfolio. Asked an employee at my firm to compile publicly available information about your work. He did not contact you or anyone who knew you. The file was 2 pages. I still have it. 3, May. Ate dinner alone at the Prince Street Wren and Oak. Read the menu you wrote. Did not ask to meet you. 4th, June. Asked the same employee whether you had a personal social media presence. He said Instagram, private. Pinterest, public. I looked at the Pinterest once. About 40 minutes. I did not save anything. She stopped there. She looked at I did not save anything for a long moment. She pressed her knuckles to her mouth. She kept going. October 5th. Charity event at the Pierre. Saw you for the first time in person. Table 3, you were at table 19. Did not approach. October 6th. Wrote Ryan Hale's name on a second napkin after the dinner. Put it in my desk. November 7th through March. Nothing. I did not look you up. I did not ask about you. I want you to know that about that period. It was 5 months. She read that line twice. A strange kind of relief moved through her. The relief of a person who has been told they have a tumor and hears benign before they hear the rest of the sentence. And then, right behind it, the cold understanding that what he had just written was his way of saying, I was not watching you every day for 2 years. Please, please believe that. She kept reading. The list got harder after that. He had hired a private investigator in April of the next year, the month after he'd heard, through the colleague's wife, that Ryan had ended things and that Lena was struggling. The PI had watched Ryan for 41 days, not her. That was on page 2, item 15. The PI's name was on the page. So was the amount Adrian had paid him. So was the date he had told him to stop. He had not, it turned out, been exaggerating about the 41 days. Item 18, the call about the job at the downtown firm. One sentence. I asked a man at Harriman Fair to put Hale's name at the bottom of his list. I did not tell him why. He did not ask. Adrian had underlined, I did not tell him why once. Item 20, Diane. She read item 23 times. January 20th, year of contract. Had a junior partner at Gallery Westbrook refer a rebrand job to Diane Laurent's studio that was already likely to land with her, accelerated the timeline by approximately 3 months. This was not a fake project. The client was real, the work was real. Diane earned the contract on her own merits. What I did was move the date. My intention in doing so was to give Diane the ability to increase your salary before you accepted a pending offer from a Philadelphia studio. You had told a colleague of Diane's, Marco, in November that you were going to accept the Philadelphia offer in February if nothing changed. Marco mentioned this to Diane. Diane mentioned this to an acquaintance of mine at a party. I moved the timeline the following week. Lena read it twice and set the page down. She looked out at the terrace. Adrian was still standing at the railing. He hadn't turned around. He had finished his espresso and was holding the empty cup loosely in one hand. The wind was moving his hair. Marco. She remembered telling Marco. Marco at the studio's little Christmas party, with the cheap Prosecco, wearing the stupid sweater with the dog on it. She remembered telling him she was going to take the Philadelphia job. She'd been drunk. Or tipsy. Her mother had just gotten the second round of scans back and the numbers weren't good, and Lena had needed to say out loud, to somebody, that she might leave New York. She'd chosen Marco because Marco never remembered anything. Marco had remembered that one. She kept reading. The list went on. 26 items. It ended in the month before their wedding. He had, she saw, paid off a small consumer loan she didn't know existed. An automatic overdraft charge that had been rolling forward on her old checking account for years. A couple of $100s she'd long since stopped thinking about. He had done it anonymously through the bank, on the day before their signing. She hadn't even noticed. She'd checked that account maybe twice since the wedding, and both times she'd figured they'd finally written off the debt. After item 26, there was a break in the page. And then, below it, in smaller writing, as if he had added it last, everything after the signing, I believe you already know. The apartment on 116th Street is owned by a holding company I control. The furniture in it was chosen, at my instruction, by a designer who was told you preferred warm neutrals and a firm mattress. You mentioned the warm neutrals to Diane once in a meeting I was not at. The designer is someone I have used before. I did not tell her it was for my wife. She was never told your name. Under that, in his handwriting, unsigned, I am aware that what this document describes is a person who did not know where his own life ended and yours began. I am not going to explain that because there is no explanation for it that will change what you are reading. I am sorry. I am going to try to be a different kind of man starting today. Hey. She folded the pages in half, then in half again. She set them on the counter. She sat on the stool for a long time. She drank her coffee. She watched him through the glass. He still didn't turn around. After a while, she realized he wasn't going to. He was going to stand out there until she called him, and if she never called him, he was going to stand out there all day. She got up. She slid the door open. The cold hit her. She stepped out in bare feet onto the terrace tile. It was colder than she expected, stinging against her soles, but she didn't go back in. Adrian. He turned. Come inside, she said. You're going to freeze to death, and then I'm going to feel guilty, and I don't want to. The corner of his mouth did the thing it did. The closest he came. He came in. He closed the door. He stood near it, not near her. I read it, she said. Okay. Marco told you I was going to take the Philadelphia job. Marco told Diane. Diane told a woman named Hannah, whose husband is on a board with me. Hannah told me in passing. She didn't know I knew you. She was telling me because Diane was worried about losing you. Diane loves me. Yes. Diane doesn't work for you. No. But Hannah's husband does. Hannah's husband and I are on 3 boards together. Adrian. Yes. Does Diane know? No. Does Hannah? Hannah thinks you two met at one of her summer things. I've let her think that. I'm sorry. Jesus. I'll correct her if you want. I'll call her today. I'll tell her the truth. I haven't yet because it would mean telling her all of it, and I wanted to tell you first. Don't call her today. Okay? I need to think about Diane. About what to say to Diane. Diane is mine. She's been mine for 5 years. She didn't do anything wrong. I don't want her to feel like a pawn in something. She wasn't a pawn. She was a professional who did her job. The work she won was real work she would have won. I only moved the clock. I know. I read that part. I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to not interrupt. Okay? When I read that part, the Diane part, I almost left. He didn't say anything. He was looking at her very steadily, the way a man looks at a thing he is prepared to lose. I had my hand on my bag, she said. I had the whole plan. I was going to go down the hallway and get my purse, and I was going to walk out of this apartment, and I was going to go to Diane, and I was going to tell her everything, and I was going to get on a train and go to my sister's in Connecticut for a week and figure out the rest of my life. I had it in my head, the whole sequence. I could see the doors. What stopped you? The thing about the loan. The loan? The overdraft on the old checking. $243. You paid it off the day before our wedding, anonymously. You didn't put it on the list as something I should thank you for. You put it on the list because you said you were going to put everything on the list. You didn't spin it. You didn't say I wanted to clean up your credit for you. You just wrote I paid it. It was $243. I did it through the bank. You didn't notice. Yes. Adrian, you are a psychopath. I don't think that's the clinical. You are a psychopath. And you are also a man who wrote down a $243 overdraft on a legal pad so you wouldn't have to lie to your wife about it 2 years later. I didn't want to leave anything off. You told me not to. I know I did. Don't talk. Okay. She walked across the living room. She sat down on the couch again. She put the folded list on the coffee table in front of her and she pressed her palm flat down on top of it. She looked at her own hand there for a while. The ring on her finger. The one he had given her on the day they signed. The one she had never worn out of the apartment except for pictures. It was on her left hand. She hadn't put it there. She'd slept in it last night. She hadn't noticed until right now. Okay, she said. Come sit down. Where? Not next to me. The chair's fine. He took the chair, the same one he'd been in last night. Here's what I want to do, she said. Okay. I want to call Diane today. I'm going to tell her I had a bad night at the gallery and I'm taking a personal day. I'm going to ask her if I can work from the apartment tomorrow. She's going to say yes because she's a good boss. I'm not going to tell her anything else yet. I don't know what I'm going to tell her. I need time. Okay? I want you to go to work. Today? Today. Tomorrow. For a while. I don't want you in the apartment all day watching me react. I want to react alone. Or with Diane on the phone. Or with my sister, but not with you in the next room. Okay. I want you to keep doing your job and I want you to not hover. I don't want you texting me every 2 hours to check if I'm okay. I don't want you sending flowers. I don't want you arranging anything. I want to be left the hell alone in your apartment for a week, and then I want to have dinner with you at the end of it and see how I feel. Okay? Just okay? I'm trying to do the thing you asked me to do. I know. I'm not. I know you are. I'm going to ask for one more thing. Anything. Don't say anything. It's a cheap answer. Say what? What? I want to meet with your lawyer. His face didn't change, but there was a small tick at the edge of his jaw. My lawyer, the one who drew up our contract. I want to meet with him. Without you. I want him to walk me through every piece of paper that has my name on it, every account, every trust. I want to understand what I've signed. I want to know what would happen to me if something happened to you. What would happen to me if I left? What happens to my mother's fund? What happens to the apartment? I want to understand the shape of what I'm inside of, legally, in writing. Yes, you should. You should have been walked through it on day one. I wasn't. I know, that was on me. I told him to keep it light. I wanted the signing to feel simple. That was wrong. I'm sorry. I want him to give me the hard version. I'll tell him today. You'll tell him I'm his client too, not just yours. That when I ask him a question, his duty is to tell me the truth, even if the truth makes you look bad. Lena, he's legally, I know how lawyers work. I want him told. I want him told by you, in a sentence he can quote back to me, that you understand his duty runs to me equally. Adrian nodded. Okay. Fine. Is there anything else? Yes. One more thing. Okay. Ryan, he didn't move. I don't want you to do anything about him. I want you to not do anything about him. That's the thing I want. Okay. I know you're going to want to. I know that there's a part of you that's already made a list of what you could do to him, because you're you and you make lists, and I want you to tell me right now what you were going to do, and then I want you to not do it. He was very quiet for a moment. Lena, tell me. There's a man Hale works for now. I know him. He owes me a favor for... It doesn't matter. I was going to call him this morning. I was going to ask him to take a second look at Hale's client list. Hale has 3 accounts that are, in my opinion, mishandled. Not illegally, just badly. He's not as good at his job as he thinks he is. If the right person reviewed those accounts, Hale would be out of a job by Friday. He would also not be hireable at his tier in this city for at least 2 years. She closed her eyes. And after that, the fiancé, Marissa. I was going to make a phone call to someone at her family's firm. Nothing direct, just a word, in the right ear, that Ryan Hale's career was about to take a step down. Her family they're not people who stay engaged to men whose careers are taking a step down. Adrian, that was as far as I was going to go. I wasn't going to touch him physically, and I wasn't going to put him under a bus. I was going to take his job and probably his fiancée, in that order, within a week. Within a week. Yes. You had a plan. I had a shape of a plan. When did you come up with it? Between 10 and 11 last night. Oh my God. You asked. I did ask. Okay. Okay. She opened her eyes. Don't do it. Okay. I mean it. Not this week, not next month, not next year. I don't want you to ever do it. If Ryan's career falls apart, it's going to fall apart because of Ryan. If his fiancée leaves him, she leaves him because of him. I don't want any of it coming from you, not through a back channel, not through a third party, not through a favor somebody owes you. Nothing. Okay? Do I have your word? Yes. Say it. You have my word. If I find out you did any of it, you'll leave, I know. I'll leave. Yes. And I'll take the napkin with me. Something shifted in his face. Just the faintest thing. Take the napkin. I will. Okay. She exhaled. She was shaking a little again. Not badly this time, like the last of something working its way out. Why? He said after a moment. Why do you want him to walk away from last night clean? He's not going to walk away clean. Lena, he laughed at you in front of... I know what he did. I was there, remember? Yes. He laughed at me because he's a small man who needed a room full of people to watch him be bigger than me. He's been doing that his whole life. To me. To every woman he's ever dated. To every guy he went to college with. That's not something I want to win. I already won it last night. I walked back in that gallery with you, and he turned white, and his fiancée let go of his arm, and the doorman called me Mrs. Voss, and I said, enjoy your engagement, and I meant it, and I walked out. That's the win. That's the whole win. If you go in and ruin his career and break up his engagement next week, you're going to make him the story again. And I don't want him to be the story. I want him to be a thing that happened to me 2 years ago that I don't think about anymore. Okay? And I want to know for me that the reason his life is what it is, good or bad, is him. Not you, not me, not my husband with his napkins and his favors. Okay? If he ends up unhappy, I want it to be because of him. Okay? And if he ends up happy, I don't know, Adrian. If he ends up happy, then he ends up happy. Some people do. Some terrible people do. I don't get to decide the universe. Okay? Stop saying okay. What do you want me to say? Say you understand? I understand. Do you? He was quiet for a long time. I understand what you're asking me to do, he said. I'm going to do it. I don't fully understand why you want it, because my instinct is still to take him down. But I don't need to understand why you want it. I'm going to do it because you asked. That's honest. Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me for not breaking someone's life. That's a strange thing to thank somebody for. I know it is. Lena. Yes. Can I ask you something? Yes. Are you telling me to restrain myself because you think it's the right thing? Or because you want to be the kind of person who does the right thing? She thought about it. Both, she said. Okay. Does that matter? It matters to me. I wanted to know. I think I want to be the kind of person who doesn't need somebody else to take her enemies out. I think I've spent a long time being somebody who was scared of a lot of things, and I don't want my first reaction after getting somebody powerful in my corner to be send him. That's not who I want to be. Okay? Also, honestly, it's not worth it. He's not worth the phone call. He's not worth the favor you'd be burning. He's not worth any part of you. He looked at her for a long moment. All right. All right. Is there anything else? Yes. Okay. I want you to stand up. Stand up. Stand up right now. Come over here. He stood. He came. He stopped on the other side of the coffee table. Closer. He came closer. Sit down. On the couch? Yes, not next to me, at the other end. Sit down. He sat down. She looked at him. At the wrinkled sleeve of the sweater, at the bare feet on her rug, at the slight shadow of stubble and the slight shadow under his eyes, and the fact that he had, somewhere in the last 12 hours, stopped trying to look like a man who owned half of Manhattan and started looking like a man who was simply at home, in his own living room, on a cold morning, married to a woman he did not know how to deserve. Give me your hand, she said. Lena, not like that. Just give me your hand. I want to look at it. He held out his hand, palm down. She took it. She turned it palm up. She looked at the scar on his thumb. She ran her finger across it just once. Where's this from? I was 13. I was cutting a mango and I was showing off in front of... It doesn't matter. I cut my hand open. My mother drove me to the hospital. 7 stitches. That was the first time she ever swore in front of me. What'd she say? In Greek. Tell me. You don't want... It was a long one. I want. She said, approximately, you stupid, stupid boy. Why must you always do a thing you cannot do? Just once. Just once. Do something small. Lena smiled. She didn't mean to. It surprised her. She sounds like a good mother. She is a good mother. Does she know? About what? About me. About any of this. Do you tell her things? She knows I'm married. She does not know anything else. I have not been a good enough son for a long enough time for her to still ask me questions I don't want to answer. She waited me out when I was 19. She's waiting me out now. Does she know my name? She knows your name. She hasn't met you. She says she wants to. I told her I'd bring you to Greece. I don't know when. Okay. She set his hand down, back on the couch between them. She did not let go. She just set it down on the fabric and left hers near it. I'm going to the guest room, she said. I'm going to read for a while. I'm going to call Diane. And then I'm probably going to sleep. I don't want dinner. I don't want company. I don't want to see you again until tomorrow morning in this kitchen, at this counter, making me another cup of coffee, okay? Okay. And next week we'll have dinner. Here, just us. You're going to cook. I'm going to, what? You're going to cook. A meal. You're going to make it yourself, whatever you can make. Eggs on toast? I don't care. I want to sit at your table and eat something you made for me with your own hands, and I want to see what that looks like. Lena, I don't know how to. You own 4 restaurants. I own 60% of 4 restaurants. That's not the same as you're going to cook. Okay. And you're going to make coffee first. The list was good. The coffee was also good. We're going to keep going from there. He was looking at her with something in his face she didn't have a word for. Okay, he said. Stop saying that. What do you want me to say? Say yes, Lena. Yes, Lena. There. That's better. Yes. I'm going to the guest room now. Yes. She got up. She folded the list one more time and she took it with her. She walked to the hallway. At the mouth of the hallway, she stopped and looked back. He was still sitting on the couch, still looking at her. She didn't say anything else. She didn't wave. She went down the hall. She closed the door of the guest room behind her. She sat on the edge of the bed. She looked at the folded pages of the list in her hand for a long time, and then she opened the drawer of the nightstand, and she put them inside, and she closed the drawer. Then she lay down on top of the covers, and she looked at the ceiling, and against every expectation she had about herself, against every defense she had built, every pattern she had, every habit of heart, she smiled, just a little, just to the ceiling, just for herself. Out in the living room, very faintly, she heard the sound of the sink running. Him, washing out her coffee cup. Not hers to wash. His, to take care of, because she was staying. She closed her eyes. She did not know what was coming next. She did not know what she was going to tell Diane. She did not know what she was going to say to her sister on the phone. She did not know what it would feel like, 3 months from now, or 6, to be standing in a kitchen that was actually, finally, in some fumbling, half-negotiated way, theirs, if such a word was ever going to fit a room like this. She just knew that for the first time in a very long time, she was not waiting for somebody to leave the room so she could finally breathe. She was the one in the room, and he, for now, was the one waiting. She slept. Really, this time. Deep and dreamless, the way a person sleeps after they put something down that they have been carrying for much too long. When she woke up, it was late afternoon. The light had gone gold across the floor, and somewhere in the apartment, very softly, music was playing. Not loud, just enough to be there. She listened for a minute. She recognized the song. It was an old one of her mother's, one she hadn't heard in years. She got up, and she went to the door of the guest room, and she rested her hand on the handle for a second without turning it. Then she turned it, and she stepped out into the hallway, and she walked toward the music. The music was coming from the kitchen. He was standing at the stove with his back to her, his sleeves pushed up to the elbows, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. There was a pan in front of him with something in it that smelled like onions and butter. He didn't hear her come in. The song was low enough that she could hear the butter hissing over it. She stopped in the doorway and watched him for a minute. He was cooking badly. That was the first thing she noticed. He was holding the spatula wrong, gripping it down by the paddle instead of by the handle, and he was hovering over the pan the way a man hovers over something he doesn't trust. He kept adjusting the heat, on, off, on, off. He was reading something on his phone propped up against the backsplash. A recipe, she realized. He had a recipe up on his phone and he was squinting at it between stirs like it was a document in a language he half remembered. "You're burning it," she said. He didn't jump. He turned his head slightly, a quarter profile. "I'm not burning it. The onions are, yeah, you're burning them. They're caramelizing. They're burning. Move the pan." He moved the pan off the heat. A little too fast. A small slosh of butter came up over the side and hit the stovetop and sizzled there. He exhaled through his nose. "I was going to surprise you." "You did? With dinner?" "I can see. It's a quiche." "A quiche. It was supposed to be a quiche. It's in the oven. This is for the top." This was going to go on the top. Adrian. Yes. Did you... Have you ever made a quiche before? No. Okay. I watched a video. How many videos? 3, 2, 2.5. She walked over. She took the spatula out of his hand. He let her. She moved the pan back to the burner, turned it down to medium, added a splash of water from the glass by the sink, and began to stir. The onions loosened up. The burnt bits came loose off the bottom and folded back into the pan. Okay, she said. Okay, we can save this. This is fine. It's going to be a little smoky, but it'll be fine. You're cooking my dinner. I'm saving your dinner. There's a difference. Right. He stood next to her. He didn't try to take the spatula back. He put his hands on the counter instead, on either side of the stove, and he watched her work. The song changed. A different one came on. Something slow, an old Nina Simone recording. The kitchen smelled like butter and onions and something faintly, embarrassingly burnt. Who chose the music? She said. Me. Why this one? Why this? You had an Ella Fitzgerald record in your apartment on 116th, on the shelf by the window. It's not the same artist. I know. I wasn't sure what you liked exactly, just the general shape of what you liked. I thought you might like this one too. I do like this one. Okay. When were you in my apartment? I wasn't. The designer. I told her warm neutrals. She took photos for her file, for the insurance on the furniture. One of the photos had your record shelf in it. I saw it once. Adrian. I know. I put it on the list. I know. I read it. Yes. She kept stirring. The onions were coming back. You're doing that thing again, she said. What thing? Where you explain everything like you're on trial. You don't have to do that. Not over a quiche. Right. I asked a question. You answered it. That's it. You don't have to also tell me you added it to the list. I wasn't sure. I know you weren't. I'm telling you. For future reference, you can just say, I saw your record shelf in a photo. You don't have to make a legal deposition out of it. He was quiet. He nodded. Okay. Okay. The quiche should be ready in about 6 minutes. Okay. Do I have time to not be the person standing at the stove in front of you? You have time. Go sit down. I'll finish the onions. Pour us something to drink. Wine or... Water's fine. It's still early. Okay. He stepped back. He washed his hands at the sink. He dried them on the dish towel on his shoulder. He went to the cabinet and took down 2 glasses. He filled them with water and set one next to her at the stove and took the other to the table, a small square foretop by the window that she had never seen used. She finished the onions. She scraped them into a small bowl. She turned off the heat. She wiped the stove with the dish towel, mostly out of habit, and when she turned around, the table was set. 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 napkins folded the wrong way, folded like a man folds napkins who is trying to remember a thing he saw once in a restaurant. She sat down. The oven beeped. Adrian got up and pulled out the quiche. It was a little browner than it should have been, one corner darker than the others, and the crust had shrunk away from the pan on one side. But it smelled like food. He cut it. He put a slice on her plate. He put a smaller slice on his own. He topped both with the onions. He sat down across from her. She took a bite. It was fine. It was a man's first quiche. The crust was slightly tough. The egg was good. The salt was a little uneven. She took another bite. She took a third. He was watching her face. Don't do that, she said. Do what? Watch me eat. Sorry. Eat your own. He ate. He chewed slowly, like a man making sure he wasn't about to poison them both. He swallowed. It's not bad, he said. It's not bad. I like the top. The onions saved it. You saved the onions. That's true. So technically you saved the top of the quiche. Technically. Technically you're cooking your own dinner. That's how it usually works with me, Adrian. He huffed, almost a laugh. Not quite. It was the closest she'd heard to one. They ate for a while in silence. The song changed again. Somewhere out the window, the sun was going down across the park, and the light on the table was the color of weak tea. She ate slowly. He ate slowly. Neither of them was in a hurry to finish. I called Diane, she said after a while. What'd you say? I told her I had a bad night. I told her I was taking a couple of personal days. She didn't press. Diane is, she's good about that. Yes. I also told her I'd been married for 3 months and I'd never said anything about it. He set his fork down. You told her. I told her. Lena. I didn't tell her your name. I didn't tell her anything about you. I said I got married in the summer and I was sorry I hadn't said anything and that I needed to process a couple of things. And she was going to hear some things eventually, and I wanted her to hear it from me first that I was fine, that I was okay, that I was going to come back to work and I was going to keep doing my job and she didn't have to worry about me. What did she say? She said, honey, I've been waiting 2 years for you to tell me you were okay. I can wait another week for the rest of it. He looked at her. That's a good boss. She's a good person. Yes? I told her I'd come in Monday. Okay. I'm going to go back to my apartment on Saturday, the one on 116th. I want to sleep there. I want to pack some things. I want to be in a place that's mine, that's just mine for a couple of nights. And then I'll come back here on Monday night after work, and we'll figure out what the next week looks like. Okay? I don't know if I'm moving in yet. You don't have to know. I don't know if I'm moving in ever. You don't have to know. You keep saying that. I keep meaning it. I want to see the lawyer on Friday. He'll make the time. And I want to... There's something else. The fund. The fund you set up for my mother's bills. Yes. I want you to... I don't want it to just... I don't want it to end. I mean, it's already... She's gone, so there aren't new bills. But I looked at it. It's still sitting there. There's money in it. I want to do something with it. It's yours. I know it's mine. Whatever you want to do. I want to give it to a place that helped her, the hospice on 79th. They were good to her. They were good to me. They had a woman there, a volunteer, who sat with my mother on the nights I couldn't come. She read her poems. She held her hand. I never got her last name. I want to give it to them. All of it. In my mother's name. Do it. All of it. All of it. Yes. It's a lot of money. It's your money. Adrian, I want you to not just say yes. I want to know you think it's a good idea. He looked at her across the table. The light was almost gone now. There was one small lamp behind him on the sideboard, and it was doing everything in the room. I think it's a good idea, he said. Why? Because you're going to spend the rest of your life looking at that account if you don't. Because it was put there for something that is already over. Because the woman who read your mother poems deserves a new couch in her break room, and a better heater, and somebody to make sure she has gas money. And because what you're describing is what your mother would have done with the money, if it had been hers. Yes. So do it. I'll have Howard call the hospice on Monday. He'll do the paperwork. You'll pick the amount. The whole amount. The whole amount. Yes. She nodded. Her eyes were hot. Okay. Okay. She ate another bite. It went down hard. Tell me something, he said. What? Tell me something about her, your mother. Why? Because I only ever knew her as a line item. Lena set her fork down. She thought about it for a long moment. She was a secretary for 31 years, she said, at a small law firm in Astoria, the kind of place that's over a dry cleaner. She wasn't a big personality. She wasn't one of those people. She had a very small life, and she was very good at it. She kept a clean house. She made her own bread, not because she had to, because she liked the way it smelled. She read 2 books a week. She never finished high school, but she finished every crossword puzzle in every paper she ever bought. She made my lunch until I was 17. When I broke up with Ryan, she didn't say anything about him. She didn't say I told you so. She didn't say I'm so sorry. She sat on my couch for an hour, and she didn't make me talk. And then she got up and she went into my kitchen, and she made me soup, and she went home. That was how she did everything. That was what she was. Okay? She would have liked you. What? She would have. You're not a man she would have approved of. You're too rich. She would have found your shoes suspicious. She didn't trust expensive shoes. She would have thought you were hiding something, because you are, all the time, and she had a good eye for that. But she would have liked you in the end, because she would have watched how you looked at me. And she would have said, "At least this one sees you, Lena." That's what she would have said. "At least this one sees you." Adrian didn't say anything. He looked down at his plate. He picked up his fork. He put it back down. When he looked up again, his eyes were not wet, not quite, but something close. "I'm sorry I didn't know her," he said. "So am I. I would have liked to." "I know." They sat in the lamplight. She put her hand out across the table, palm up. An invitation, nothing more. After a moment, he put his hand in hers. Just his fingers in her palm. He didn't grip. She didn't grip. They just sat like that, while the Nina Simone ended and the next song started. Something she didn't know, something slow, a piano. "Can I say one more thing?" she said. "Yes." "Then I'm done tonight. Then we eat the quiche. Okay?" "Okay. I'm going to be angry about this for a while. A long while, maybe. It's going to come back. It's going to come back when we're in a car or at a dinner or on vacation in 3 years, and somebody's going to mention Philadelphia or Diane or, I don't know, overdrafts, and I'm going to get quiet, and you're going to know why. And I don't want you to handle it. I don't want you to send flowers. I don't want you to write me another list. I just want you to let me be angry and let it pass, and then come back to me when it passes. That's what I need. Okay? And sometimes I'm going to need to leave. I'm going to need to go to my sister's for a weekend, or I'm going to need to go to my own apartment and sleep there. And you're going to have to let me go and not text me and just wait. Okay? Can you wait?" He thought about it. "I've waited 2 years, Lena. I can wait." Don't say it like that. Don't make it sound like don't make it a line. "Sorry." Don't apologize. Just yes or no. Can you let me go when I need to go, knowing I'll come back and not do anything in the middle? Yes. Really? Yes. Because if you can't, this isn't going to work. I can't be with somebody who's going to make a phone call every time I go quiet. I can. Okay. I can, Lena. Okay. She squeezed his hand. Once. She let go. She picked up her fork. "This is still not bad," she said. "Thanks." For a man who owned 4 restaurants. 60% of 4 restaurants. 60% of a bad quiche. "Yes." She smiled. He smiled. It wasn't the half smile anymore. It was something close to the whole thing. He was going to need practice at it. So was she. They finished. He did the dishes. She sat on the stool at the island and watched him. And when he tried, once, to tell her she didn't have to sit there, she gave him a look that made him stop. And she kept sitting, and he kept washing. After, they didn't do anything. He made tea. They took it to the living room. She sat at her end of the couch, and he sat at his end, and they did not touch, and they did not talk for a long time. The city lights came on across the park. Somebody somewhere below the window was playing music, faintly, some bass line thumping through a wall. A helicopter went over. Around 10, she put her mug down. "I'm going to bed." "Okay." "The guest room." "Okay." "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Lena." She went down the hall. She didn't lock the door this time. She didn't think about it until she was already in bed. She lay there for a while, listening. She heard him moving around quietly. She heard the lamp in the living room click off. She heard his footsteps go the other way down the hall to his own room, which she had still never been in. She heard the door close. She slept. The weeks that followed weren't clean. Nothing about them was clean. She went back to her apartment on Saturday, and she lay on her own bed and she cried for an hour. Not for any one reason she could name, just the long drain out of a body that had been holding too much. She slept in her own sheets that night. She made her own coffee in the morning. She took the train down to her sister's in Connecticut on Sunday, and she told her sister everything. Her sister, Kate, older, 2 kids, a husband she had chosen badly but who had turned out, to everyone's surprise, to be a good man in the end. Kate listened for 3 hours without interrupting, which was not something Kate was known for, and at the end of it she said, Lena, I don't know what to tell you. That's, I don't know. That's a lot. That is a hell of a lot. I think he's crazy. I think he might love you. I don't know if those are the same thing. Lena went back to the city on Monday. She went to work. Diane didn't ask. Diane brought her coffee, and she put her on a new project, and she did not once bring up the wedding Lena hadn't told her about. And when, 4 weeks later, Lena finally sat down in Diane's office and told her the whole story, or most of it, the parts that mattered, Diane said, "Okay, sweetheart, I'm not going to pretend I understand it, but I want you to know that if it goes sideways, you have a job here and a couch in my living room, and you can come stay with me for as long as you need, and I will not ask questions." Lena cried in Diane's office. Diane had tissues. Diane always had tissues. That was why Diane was Diane. She met with Howard, the lawyer, on a Friday, alone. He walked her through everything. The contract, the accounts, the holding company that owned the apartment on 116th, the trust that held her mother's fund, the prenup that she'd signed not fully understanding, the new prenup he was prepared to draft if she wanted it. Howard was in his 60s, careful, and he answered every question she had exactly as he'd been instructed to. He did not flinch when she asked him to explain what would happen if she divorced Adrian tomorrow. He told her. The number was larger than she had expected. She didn't take notes. She just listened. At the end he said, "Mrs. Voss, I want you to know, I have represented Adrian for 11 years. I have never seen him like this. I don't know what the right advice is, but I know that if you were my daughter, I would tell you to trust your own stomach, not mine." She thanked him. She left. She moved in, slowly. Not in a single day. Not even in a single week. She brought a suitcase one weekend, a box of books the next, a pair of lamps she liked, her own, cheap ones, the kind you bought at the discount place. And she put them in the living room and she made him leave them there, even though they didn't match anything. He left them there. They stayed. They fought too. They fought about small things at first because the small things were safer. Whether the windows should be cracked open at night, whether she could leave her shoes by the door, whether he was ever going to stop standing up every time she came into the room. They fought about the big things later, when she was ready. She lost her temper at him once, in March, about Philadelphia. She'd been fine for weeks, and then she'd been at a work dinner and somebody had mentioned a job in Philadelphia, and the whole thing had come back up, and she'd come home, and she'd sat on the couch and said, I can't do this tonight. And he hadn't tried to fix it. He had just gotten up and gone into his own room, and she'd sat alone on the couch for 2 hours. And when she'd gone to bed, her own door had been closed, and his had been closed, and in the morning there had been coffee waiting for her, and he hadn't asked anything. He had just said good morning, and they had gone on from there. That was how they figured it out. One small skirmish at a time. Ryan did not come back. Not the way Adrian had been planning. Adrian kept his word. He did not make the call to Ryan's boss. He did not make the call to Marissa's family. He did not lift a finger. And Ryan's life, as Lena had said it would, did the thing it was always going to do. A month after the gallery, Marissa's family posted the engagement in the society pages with a different man's face next to hers. Nobody said why. Nobody had to. Ryan was not at that wedding. Ryan was not at anybody's wedding for a while. Lena found out about it the way she found out about most things, through a friend of a friend, in passing, at a studio happy hour. She felt when she heard it almost nothing, a little tired, mostly fine. She went home that night and she told Adrian, over pasta, Marissa left Ryan, and he had looked up from the pan and he had said okay, and he had gone back to stirring, and that was all they had said about it, ever. Ryan Hale, in the end, was a man who had been given every chance to ruin himself, and had taken them. Adrian's mother came in April. She was a small, sharp woman with hair the color of steel and a handbag that looked like it weighed more than she did. She came through the door of the penthouse and she hugged her son for a long time, muttering in Greek into his shoulder. And then she turned around and she looked at Lena and she said, in perfect English, "So you are the one." Lena said, "I am the one." His mother took both of her hands and she squeezed them and she said, "You are very pretty. You are prettier than the pictures." He sends me pictures. He never tells me anything, but he sends me pictures. Lena laughed. His mother laughed. Adrian stood behind them, looking like a man who wanted to be under the floor. His mother stayed for 10 days. On the 7th day, she sat on the terrace with Lena and she said quietly, My son he has always been much. Do you understand what I mean by this word? Much. Too much of everything. Too much thinking. Too much wanting. Too much quiet. You have to tell him when it is too much. He does not know. He thinks he is normal. He is not normal. Lena said, I know. His mother said, good. Then you are going to be fine. On the 10th day, she got on a plane. Adrian drove her to the airport himself. When he came back, he sat down on the couch next to Lena, not at the other end, next to her, close, and he put his head back against the cushion and he closed his eyes. And she, without really thinking about it, put her hand on his. He did not move for a long time. Finally, he said, I missed her. I didn't know I'd missed her until she left again. Lena said, I know. He said, I don't know how to be the man you want me to be. She said, you're doing it. He said, I'm not sure. She said, I am. He opened his eyes. He looked at her. And for the first time in all the months she had been married to him, he leaned over and he kissed her. Not hard, not long, just a kiss on the couch in the late afternoon with the city outside and the clock on the wall ticking and his mother's lipstick still on the wine glass on the coffee table. It was the most unremarkable kiss of her life. It was the most important one. She did not in the end ever fully stop being angry at him. She came to understand that she wasn't going to. What had been done to her, the steering of her life, the arranging of things, the quiet hand on the wheel, was not something that unmade itself just because the hand eventually came off. She carried it. She carried it the way people carried every real thing. Some days it was smaller. Some days, around an anniversary or a holiday or a song she hadn't expected, it got bigger again. She learned to tell him when it was bigger. She learned, which was harder, to tell him when it was smaller too. The second thing mattered more than she had thought it would. Love, she figured out, somewhere around the end of that first year, was not the absence of the bad thing. Love was the daily choice, made over and over, to keep sitting across from the person who had done it, and keep eating, and keep talking, and keep showing up. Because the alternative, the other life, the clean one, the untouched one, was not in the end a life she wanted more than this one. She stayed. She stayed because she wanted to, which was the one reason her mother would have told her that was ever worth staying for. There are things in the end that she wanted other women to know. Women like her, before. Women sitting on the couch at 11 at night after somebody has made them feel small. Women who have been told by a man in a nice suit that they are not built for his world. Women who have been laughed at in rooms with chandeliers in them. Things she wished somebody had told her when she was 24, when she was 26, when she was 28, and crying in a cab because Ryan hadn't come home again. The first thing she would tell them is this. A man who needs to make you smaller to make himself bigger is a man who is already, in his own private accounting, very small. You can trust this. It will not feel true when you are in it. It will feel, in the moment, like the whole room is agreeing with him. But the room will forget him. The room forgets everyone, eventually. It will not forget you if you do not let it. The second thing is that safety is not the same as love, and love is not the same as control, and a person who confuses those three things in themselves will always, always try to confuse them in you. You will know you are loved by the way you feel when you say no. You will know you are controlled by the way you feel when you try. The third thing, the hardest thing, is that good love, real love, love that lasts, is going to be made by two people who are not, themselves, entirely good. It is going to be made by a woman who has a temper and a sharp tongue and a habit of leaving dishes in the sink, and a man who is too much and too quiet and who keeps strange things in his wallet. It is going to be messy. It is going to be compromised. It is going to have, inside of it, old hurts that never fully heal, and mistakes that are never fully undone, and 100 small resentments that you will both learn to carry without naming. That is what real love looks like from the inside. Nobody tells you that. Everybody tells you about the sweep and the thunder and the helicopter ride off into the sunset version. Nobody tells you about the burned onions on a Thursday night in November, and a man washing your coffee cup because you are staying, and the quiet understanding that neither of you is entirely the person the other one thought they were getting, and you are choosing, anyway, to keep going. The fourth thing Lena would tell them is that there is a moment in every woman's life when she gets to decide whether she is going to keep apologizing for existing or whether she is going to stop. For Lena, the moment was on a cold sidewalk half a block from a gallery on a Tuesday night in November, when she looked down at her phone and she saw a name, and she made a choice. She has thought about that moment many times since. She has thought about who she was the minute before and who she was the minute after. They are different people. They are the same person. She carries them both. She is not special. That is the last thing she would tell them. She is not special, and her story is not magic, and the man who came for her in the car that night is not a prince, because princes do not exist, and what she married is a complicated and flawed and sometimes frightening human being, the way all of us are complicated and flawed and sometimes frightening. And what she has now is not a fairy tale. It is a life. It is a life she chose, out of the full set of lives she could have chosen, and she is still choosing it every day with her eyes open, knowing everything. On the 1-year anniversary of the night at the gallery, Adrian asked her what she wanted to do. He had something planned. He always had something planned. She told him to cancel it. She told him she wanted to stay home. She wanted him to cook. She wanted him to make the quiche. The same quiche. The bad one. She wanted to eat it at the table by the window, with a song on. And then she wanted to do the dishes with him, and she wanted to sit on the couch at her end, and him at his end. And she wanted to talk about nothing in particular, and she wanted to go to sleep in the bedroom they now shared. And she wanted to wake up in the morning with him there, and she wanted the day to be an ordinary day. He canceled the plans, he made the quiche, he burned the onions again. She saved them again. He laughed. A real one this time, short, surprised out of him. And she laughed too, and they sat at the table and they ate, and outside the window the city went on being the city. And somewhere in it probably, Ryan Hale was sitting in a bar. And somewhere in it probably, a different woman was walking home after being made to feel small in a gallery, and the world was what the world always was. Lena reached across the table. She put her hand on Adrian's. She was not surviving anymore. She was not waiting to be chosen. She was not small. She was sitting at her own table, in her own apartment, across from a man who had been honest with her, eventually, about all of it, and who had, when she asked him to stop, stopped. She was seen. She was known. She was picking her own life. The kitchen light was warm. The song changed. Her coffee was still warm in the cup. She took another sip. It was finally enough. And that was the end of the story.